Greetings, Oakland High computer scientists. So in this video, we are going to go over all the portions of the interactive card project, which will be a holiday card that when you interact with a sprite, something in the environment will change. In this case, we showed two new sprites, we hid the present, and we're changing two of the sprite properties. In this case, it's scale. And with the bike, we are rotating it clockwise. So let's get started. Quick reminder, the organization of this video is going to go over each criteria point on the rubric. And you can find this rubric on Google Classrooms under the project guide. It's on the second page. And if you need to skip to a different criteria point, you can look at the this YouTube video's information section and skip ahead to the bookmarked section where I go over that criteria point. So let's get started on making our three sprites. So I am going to do an example that is similar to the student exemplar on Objective 2. I've already made three sprites. I made a Christmas tree and then two presents. So out of simplicity, I am just going to keep them as rectangles and squares, but you can spend more time making your animations at a later time. Or you can make them now and then hit pause and continue to do the programming part alongside the video. So let's get started by clicking on the Sprite toolbox. And we need to build three sprites. So I'm going to start by making the tree first. So I'm going to grab the variable that stands for creating a sprite, and I'm going to rename mine to be my Christmas tree. Next, I am going to set the animation of the tree. So I need to say tree.setAnimation, and I'm going to select the animation that corresponds to the tree. The last thing I need to do is, under world, I need to give the command draw sprites inside of the draw loop. So now when I hit run, I can see that my tree is showing up in my animation window. So let's make two sprites for the gifts. So I'm going to have my gift number 1 that is set to my other animation, and I'm going to do a second sprite for gift number 2. So now I have a total of 3 sprites that should be, oh, you need to rename these to gift 1 and gift 2. Great. So now when I run, we should see I have all 3 of my sprites showing up in the window. So at the beginning, though, of my card, my holiday card, I don't want the user to be able to see the gifts they're about to receive. So perhaps they need to shake the tree or press a certain button on the keyboard in order for these presents to show up. So I want to hide these 2 gifts at the beginning of the program. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the sprite.visible block, and I'm going to put it above the draw loop, but underneath the creation of all the sprites. And I'm going to say gift 1, and we can set this visible property to either true or false. If it's false, it will not show that sprite. So again, this is a Boolean variable, meaning it can either be true or false. So let's test that out. You can see that the red gift, aka gift 1, is no longer showing. So let's do the same thing for gift 2. And we need to set it to false as well. So in the next thing we're going to go over is how can we have 2 of the sprites respond to user input, either a key down or moving your mouse. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose to have my sprites appear. The GIFs are going to appear if I hit the spacebar down. So I need to figure out how can I program something, perhaps using the control statements, such that if I press the spacebar down, that we can show gift 1 and gift number 2 on the screen. So again, I'll repeat that. How can we use an if statement so that when we click the spacebar key down, we will show gift 1 and gift 2 on the screen. So let's start by grabbing that if statement, and we're going to put it inside the draw loop, like so. And what we need to put inside of here is, in this case, if we're doing a key press, we need to see if a certain key has been pressed down. So if the key down, and let's, in this case, choose the space bar. If we click the space bar down, we want to show gift 1 and gift 2. So I need to grab these 2 blocks of code and move them underneath the if statement. That means if the spacebar is pressed, we need to set the gift 1 to be visible. So we want its visible property to be set to true, meaning that we can see gift 1 after the space key has been pressed. So let's do the same thing now with gift 2. So if we hit the key down, then the GIFs become visible. So let's see if it works. So I hit the key, and voila, they're appearing on the screen on top of one another. We may want to move them to different locations. So maybe to the left and to the right of the tree. So I can do that by changing the X and Y location of the GIFs when they are created. So I'm going to move the GIF number 1 50 pixels, let's say 100 pixels to the left, to the position of 100. So I'm going to change its X position to 100. And then I'm going to do 100 units to the right for GIF number 2 at 300. X equals 300. And now what we can see is when we hit the spacebar, the GIFs are separated. So now we have done the second criteria, which is at least 2 sprites respond to user input. Let's move to the third, which is updates at least 3 different sprite properties in the draw loop. So let's see. Which properties can we choose? Let's stick to something similar to the student exemplar. Perhaps my red GIF can rotate in a clockwise fashion, and my other GIF can change the scale and get bigger and then smaller and bigger and smaller. Okay, so let's start with making gift 1 rotate. So what we want is when we hit the spacebar, click, we see now there are 2 GIFs on the screen, and we want them to, after we hit the space key down, to either rotate or change the scale. So let's start with finding the sprite.rotation block in the sprite toolbox, and we're going to drag it inside of this if statement. And we're going to say we want the gift 1, we want it to rotate clockwise. So in order to change the gift 1's rotation, we need to add some amount to the rotation. So if we add a positive amount to gift 1's rotation, it will rotate clockwise. And if we subtract from gift 1's rotation, it will rotate counterclockwise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 1 angle to gift 1's rotation over and over again. And we can do that by using what we call a counter pattern. And to build a counter pattern, we need to go to the math toolbox and grab a addition sign and put it on the right-hand side of this equal sign. And we want to add 1 to the previous value of gift rotation. So here's the confusing part. We need to grab another gift 1 rotation block and put it on the left-hand side of this operator sign. So let's go to Sprites, find the rotation, put it on the left-hand side of that plus sign operator, and type in the appropriate name. And let's see if gift 1 now rotates in a clockwise fashion. So it doesn't look like it's rotating in a clockwise fashion, and that's because at this point we still forgot to do something important in this draw loop. We forgot to add a background inside the draw loop so that it shows each unique frame of the sprite animation instead of just drawing multiple on top of each other. And you'll see what I mean as soon as I add the background. So as soon as I find the background, I'll set it inside the draw loop, and it can be whatever color you want. If I hit reset, run, spacebar, you should be able to see that gift 1 is rotating. Oh, there it is. We have to hold down the spacebar, and we can see that it is rotating. Great. Even though we're not hitting the spacebar down, we can change this key down to, I think, a key went down. Let's see if that changes it so that it will continue to rotate after we hit the spacebar. So reset, and I'll hit run, click the spacebar. And that did not work. Let's try one more. If key went up. No, so let's go back to the key down, and we'll stick with that. We can figure out a different solution if we want to continue to rotate over and over again. So let's see, if key down, spacebar, and I have to hold the key. Okay, so let's also change the scale of the second GIF. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find sprite.scale, and I'm going to change it in the same way as this counter pattern. I'm going to say gift to scale, and what we want to do is we want it to get bigger and then smaller and then bigger and then smaller, similar to the dog in the student example. So what we're going to do is we're going to utilize something in the math toolbox called random number. And what this does is it will return a random number between the specified minimum and the specified max number that we put in. So these two in which we will choose a number from. So if I say the minimum is 10 and the max is 20, it will return a random number between 10 and 20. So let's grab that random number function and let's put it in here. Let's choose the scale operates where if we did, for example, 0.5, that would make it half as small. So maybe we can make it go half as small to twice or 4 times as big. And let's try what happens when we do that. So I hold the spacebar down, and we can see that it's getting bigger and smaller, and this one is rotating. Great. So This is how you update a sprite's properties inside the draw loop. You can imagine that we did a third sprite property, but in the interest of time, I'm only going to do 2. And now we're on to using at least 2 conditionals that are triggered by a variable or a sprite property. So we already did one conditional statement, the if statement. Perhaps I'll show you how we can move one of these sprites around using the keys. So let's imagine that after we show the presents, we get to choose which present that we want, and we get to control the present and move it, to a different part of the screen. So I'm going to show you next how can we use these if statements to control moving one of these 2 present sprites. So what we'll do is we're going to use the if statement to say if we press the up key or the down key or the right key or the left key, that we can move the sprite up, left, right, or down on the screen. So I'm going to need 4 if statements to control the motion of a particular sprite. So let's start with 4 if statements. The next thing I'll do is under the world, I am going to grab a number of different keyDown codes. So I want to see if the up key has been pressed up, if the down key has been pressed,